So how much do creatives make? Give us a range.
Within more of like the advertising design space or like marketing, commercial work, starting is usually like a day rate because you're usually more of a freelancer at the beginning of that career. And that can start around like $450 a day in LA. If you are a senior designer in this space, you can make $1,000 a day. And that's a day rate. But salary wise, it really depends what agency, what studio you work with. 70, 80. And then you can go up to like past 300,000.
Mm-hmm. Right.
At the top of your game.
Yeah. I'd say like in the sort of more furniture design space, you know, it really varies because if you're a creator, then obviously a lot will hinge on how well known you are, how many orders you receive, and, you know, whether or not you're well known as opposed to emerging, or, you know, how much it costs in terms of materials as opposed to, you know, I guess the profit margins, right? So I think it, you know, the variation means that it's really hard to put a dollar sum to it. So you could be making something like, you know, a few $1,000s through to, you know, well into the, you know, hundreds of thousands or like even more. But obviously, you know, it also depends on if you're working with a gallery and how much the gallery is taking away from that. You know, how many sort of exposure moments do you have in any given year that allows you to make sales? But so I guess, you know, that the artist or the creator, that part aside, if we're talking about the creative industry as a whole, you know, if we're talking about, you know, sort of production through to creation, but also agency and, you know, all of the different types of talent in the industry. Do you think that it's an industry that actually generates a sustainable income?
Yeah. And again, it would go back to the distinction of which type of industry you're in, because in the commercial world, so much money, you know, marketing budgets are crazy big. And so that's why I tend to see like a lot of like, say, more fine artists end up gearing towards more of the commercial space because the budgets are way bigger. You're not just like playing to people's like investment portfolios, you know, like this is the wider market. Like literally millions and millions or millions are spent like all the time. And so I would say there's a lot of money, but with the big but, marketing budgets are changing too because of AI. And I hate that we keep talking about AI, but that's the reality of, you know, because algorithms have really changed the way people consume in general. Now marketing strategies are geared towards the algorithm, and you're playing this algorithm game. Like every time the algorithm changes, then marketing strategies changes, you know? And because of that, people are shrinking the marketing budget because maybe we don't have to do this $500,000 or $1 million commercial to get the same reach that potentially a $50,000 campaign ends up driving the same conversion rate. And so there's a real reality of like, oh, okay, even though the salaries are what they are now, that doesn't mean that demand for these jobs are changing. They are changing drastically. A lot of people that I know at really, really great companies are getting let go because AI is just changing it. So it's definitely like there is a lot of money here, but to survive, you're having to adapt very, very fast.
Right. Yeah. No, that's interesting because, you know, what I've noticed, having come from the sort of corporate legal side of things and moving across to the creative industries is that, you know, sure, there's a lot of money and, you know, it's an industry that, where a lot of money does go around. But it goes to a select few people. You know, not everyone gets to have a piece of the pie, which is an interesting sort of observation because, you know, in white collar jobs, for instance, you know, there is like an industry standard and people seem to either make something around that standard and you're sort of offered some security in that, you know, that's sort of as your sort of years of experience increase, then there's a proportionate increase in salary. But I don't think that's the case in the creative industries, right? Is that fair to say?
It depends. If you're in like a very corporate like creative or like working in a creative team in a corporate setting, it is very like the jumps are
progression is
very
there, yeah.
and it's like locked.
And maybe then I'm talking more about the freelancers, talking more about the people who are working on a project basis, or talking about the people who are like, you know, working outside of the corporate structure, working to build something, you know, whether it's a new business, a startup, or, you know, creative industries as talent.
Yes.
I guess that's where there's a huge variation.
There is a huge variation, at least in like in our space. The variation comes down to whether or not you're a talent that's already creating for predetermined brief or concept versus your talent that you have your own style and clients are coming to you for your style. And those are different ranges as well, right? Because then if you're in the first category of your talent hired for an already predetermined style, brief, concept, then you're just another workhorse. And so you're competing with the day rates of everyone else. And so it just comes down to who's available. Whoever emails back first gets it, you know, whoever responds first gets it. And then versus if like a client's coming to you for a specific style, then your rate can be much higher, right? And we're really seeing that even within like the content creator space, where people with like a relatively high following will then suddenly be like, if you want to work with me, you got to pay me $20K for like a video. And you're like, where did that number even come from? You know, and but then it's really funny because they're like, oh, this is just based off of exposure. I can expose you to this many people. But then when you're in the advertising space, pure exposure, they would maybe sometimes do a different marketing strategy when it comes to just awareness. Like if we're just doing an awareness campaign, okay, then maybe we'll engage with you. Maybe the 20,000 is worth it. But if you have a million followers and you do a video, but then it doesn't prove to be a high conversion rate, like people actually don't end up buying through your ad, then they like brands don't want to spend that money on you because they're like, why would we pay you so much when like you actually don't bring us sales? And so like there have been a lot of moments and different creators where you're like, where is this like number coming from? Like, why are you charging so much when you don't have a proven conversion rate? You know, so there is a little bit of discrepancy of like, just because like I am like a well-known whatever influencer or even well-known artist, therefore I'm gonna like, you know, charge this amount. It's like it has to come with some real numbers. So that I think in the advertising marketing space, like that's a reality of like, yeah, sure, you can charge a ton, but that doesn't necessarily mean brands will come back and work with you.
That's some really interesting insight into the industry. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure some people are going to be really interested to learn more about that as well. Yeah, no, thanks for sharing that part. That's like, ooh, tea.
Yeah, that's tea. Like, is the range quite big in the spaces that you work in?
Yeah, I think the range is quite big in the sense that, you know, when you're at the sort of bottom end of the range, a lot of people want to work with you for free. They don't want to pay you. They want to pay you with credits. They want to pay you with, you know, association. I guess that is something that's, you know, prevalent or somewhat, I guess, people try because they can get away with it. And some people have. Unfortunately, you know, no one should be really working for free because it's your time and your energy and your expertise. But there's that. And then there's obviously some individuals who have their own brand and reputation that have a lot of pull, who are able to obviously charge a lot more for their projects. And kudos to them because they've obviously been able to sort of build that themselves. But that's 1 in a million. You know, that's so few and far between that, you know, it's, you know, then when people ask me, oh, is this an industry that I should get into? You know, should I give it a go? I always lead with, you know, how long do you think you can hold out with zero income? Because that's the reality of getting into something like this. You know, you have to stick it out. It takes a long time to build. Your experience sort of, or, you know, in the early days, you might not get paid that much, if anything. But then, but you need to feed yourself, you need a livelihood.
Real.
So it's tricky. And so, for people who are starting out in the creative space, would you recommend it?
Depends what your convictions are.
See, it's a similar sort of story, right?
Yes.
I mean, that's sort of where I was getting at as well. Like, how much do you want to work in this space?
Yeah.
And what's your runway look like?
Yeah.
But realistically, where do you want to be in order to get there? What are you willing to do? What additional studies are you willing to do? What sort of menial jobs are you willing to do? How much are you actually invested in this?
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Because the payoff isn't real. It's delayed,
Yeah, definitely. And that's really interesting that you say that because one of my colleagues a while ago asked me, like, Riya, how come so many of these designers are Korean? I know this seems like kind of like a side tangent, but like when I went to Otis, like my graduating class, like with my cohort, like predominantly like a lot of Koreans. And I was like, because there's money in this side of the arts and design, advertising space. There's money here. That's why we're all doing it. Even though so many of them would have been such talented like fine artists. Incredible. But then they chose design, commercial type design because there's money in it, And so it's like, it depends. Are you just wanting to just be creative and it doesn't really matter the type of work that it is? If it pays well, then that's the direction you go, then okay. But I feel like you're like, no, I know what kind of art I want to create and that's the only art that I want to create, then like, I feel like then you're going to have to, like you said, you're going to have to grind it out and be very patient and be willing to be a starving artist for a while until you have your breakthrough.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, isn't that interesting? Because the concept of the starving artist, it can sound romantic, but realistically, it's even harder in this day and age to be a starving artist because, where is your studio going to be and who's going to offer that space to you for free or at a low rate? It's in reality, it's more the more well off you are, the easier it is for you to pursue a career in the fine arts.
Yeah.
Right?
But another big but.
Okay.
This episode's all about big butts. Is social media is also changing that game for your fine artist that doesn't have a lot of money. Like, reels and contents popping off of people just showing their process. They're just in their tiny space, humble space, and people love it, and people are starting to generate income from that too. So I think that is also like a new change where it's like, maybe there might be this new wave of fine artists that feel a bit more emboldened, empowered to maybe pursue it, even if they don't have like this financial backing.
Right. Okay, so this goes back to what we were saying before about personal branding, right? About like how you utilize social media in order to create leverage, to, increase your chances of exposure and being found and also like being proactive about creating revenue streams for yourself. I think that it's so important that people realize that, okay, so the variation of the starving artist now is that, people don't know you until you're seen but you have all the sort of control and tools within reach, to get you there.
Yeah.
Like you can do that yourself. And if you're creative and, if you're in the creative industries, the presumption is that you are, then be creative about how you, create a platform for yourself.
Yes.
I think that's sort of the encouragement that I want to give to others as well, is that, you can't sort of go, oh, well, I can't do this anymore because I don't have the money, or I can't do this because I don't want to invest all that time, or the money. You need to sort of pave your own way.
Yes. You have to take that creative skill set to translate to also creative thinking, creative problem solving solutions for yourself. And I think that's the part that I think some creatives have a really hard time doing, to think in that manner and think more of like a business person with their art and building that like skill set. And especially when like you're having to do a pitch, like, thinking that way of like, I'm gonna present myself so that like I am enticing and they want to hire me. And so therefore I need to talk a certain way and make sure I like, upsell this side of my skill sets and make sure that like, I bring more value than to like the number that's written on the paper. Like that skill set's like a hard thing to build up, in the creative space because you're so invested in the creation, like the actual creation, that the building of the business side of the creator like tends to get a little thrown on the side or maybe not even given a lot of attention to. And so hopefully like our conversations are like helping other creatives to be like, feel encouraged. Like this is a space that you can, because I would say 100%, so much conviction. Creative people are so great at creative solutions, thinking out of the box in almost every, like if you're creative, your creative solutions probably come out in the way you live, the way that, do your like household chores or how you go about your daily lives. Your creative solutions probably come out and like seep out of your lifestyle all the time. And so in that very same sentiment, like I think like creative entrepreneurs are so extremely brilliant. If you allow yourself to like flex that side of your brain and more into like the business side, oh my God.
Right.
They're amazing.
It's interesting because for me, what I had to do was I went and did a degree, a master's in, sort of strategic design and management. And all of that was based around, human-centered design and design thinking, applications to solve problems. And I needed that to help sort of change the way I thought about and tackled problems in more creative ways. And I think that that's a skill set that you can learn. I mean, there's programs that you can take online, like there's IDOU programs and whatnot as well. Ultimately, working in the creative industries from a business perspective, what I can say is that, there are so many ways to, make progress within this space, but what you need to do is you need to take a moment to reflect and take stock of and understand what your strengths are so that you can create a path forward and create your own manual to how you want to approach your career, because there is no guidebook. And, unlike other industries where, there are certain steps that you need to go through, this industry isn't like that. I think that you can really sort of create and reinvent yourself and, really sort of the more you know yourself and what you have to offer, the more you can actually sort of sell that as and package that as a service or package that to potential clients and buyers. And that's all on you. And then you can apply all of those creative approaches to how you go about doing that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because it's like if you decide to go into business for yourself, yes, like there is no blueprint of how you should attack it.
Yeah. Why the sigh?
Because it's you wish that like in other industries there would be, right? Like if you work in corporate side of creative work, or like you work for a production agency, like there's a very clear like pathway on how to climb that ladder, right? But then that's within the constructs of their company, or in like how they do it in that particular industry. But then when you want to step out of that and pursue your own personal creative entrepreneurship, it's like, like it's like it could be anything. It could be anything that you want it to be. And I think that's the part where it's like it's such a big jump, like really, really big jump. Which I don't know. I don't know if other industries go through this, like have the same like dilemma, but at least that's what I can say from like more of the commercial side of creative arts. It's like I wish there was a clear pathway.
I think that's the trade-off with industries. For instance, the legal industry, become an entry level, lawyer, and then an associate, senior associate partner, all of those. There's these steps that you can take. And what you're doing is you're buying into that clarity. You know what the next step is going to be. And it's for a lot of like planners or like logical sort of square thinkers, that's important because you know what you're working towards and what all of this is for. I think in the creative industries, I think that's also the trade-off for doing something that's beautiful or that's so like outside the box, is that there is no linear path. You know, you can like the design squiggle, where it like takes you all over and you don't know what that next turn is going to look like. And you don't know whether or not it's going to be up or down or sideways. And I think that's also the beautiful thing about working in that industry, is that, you know, you don't know where it's going to take you. The uncertainty is uncomfortable, but obviously that's also like, that's part of the journey.
Yeah, because I guess if like you take like a zoomed out view of the creative industry, it is very culturally tied. And so if culture changes, the arts change, or if the arts change, culture changes. It's like a very, you know, like constantly morphing thing, and a lot that drives it is people. So if people change, the industry changes, you know? And so I think in that sense, like you either create to address, like capture the trend of that time, or you create to be a timeless, you know, anchor in culture. And that's really hard to do. So most people chase after the trend, whatever the trend is in that industry, right? And then that's like a constant, like, you're always chasing after something, right? And then if you're the very few that actually set the trend, amazing. But then you have to create the next trend, you know? So it's like this ever-moving target. And so I think that's also the difficulty, because as a creative, you have to choose. I feel like at the end of the day, that's what you have to choose. Am I going to chase after trend, or am I going to chase after the art? And I hope that it's timeless and that people can understand that and appreciate that. And that's like, usually money follows trends. And that's where all the trade-off happens. And I think that's where a lot of people end up being like, I'm tired of this industry. Like, I just want to go back to just creating for myself. And I think that's the unfortunate part that I find in the creative industry is like, yeah, to survive, you have to follow the dollars, but the dollars follow the trends, and it might be outside of what you originally even wanted to do to begin with.
Wow.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, the cold hard facts of reality, right?
Yeah.
You know, unfortunately, you need money to survive.
Yeah, so like my personal design aesthetic like used to be very experimental. Weird.
Really?
Yeah.
Didn't know that.
Yeah. I almost went into experimental design like for spaces, but I was like, follow the money. And so now I became a designer that can design for any style, because I needed to make sure I capture every project, every brief, all the dollars come to me to survive, you know? And so now I'm at a place of like, I can literally emulate any style out there. Like, not to brag at all, but that's just like how I was trained. But now it's like I've lost my sense of like actual creative like excitement, because I traded it to follow the trends and follow the money and go to the production agency studios or work on certain projects.
So are you now going back to, or wanting to go back to?
Yeah,
Okay.
I am. I actually am, and it's weird. I'm like,
That's amazing.
In my mind, though, I haven't done anything.
Okay. In your mind, you're there already.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's a really cool insight, and that's, I think, very valuable for a lot of people, to be honest, because, you know, a lot of people sort of think about the creative industries as just being like, you know, just them expressing all of the creativity that they have. But when you've got a job in the creative industries, it's also different.
Yes. You know, like I would also like to say, like, the part of the reality of why it's like, if you want to survive, you have to follow the trends, is because the people that hold the money usually aren't creative people. These are rich people that want to make more money. They're the ones pouring the money into the industry, right? And so you have very few of them are like very creatively inclined and want to like support, you know, like artists and their creativity, but mostly like they're also chasing after dollars. And so they're the head honchos dictating where their money's being spent. And so there's already this like big guy controlling how creativity ends up outflowing in the world. And so that's also kind of like a bummer situation that I found working at different studios. Was like a lot of the people making the calls weren't even creative at all. They're just looking at numbers. And I'm like, oh, that kills the creative spirit. It sucks.
Do you find it's possible for creatives to get to those positions as well?
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely. But then very few do I find are the ones actually getting to the place of controlling the dollars and have the power to be like, no, let's just go after the creative and not think about the numbers.
Yeah. Well, because you're running a business at that point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. So at the end of the day, it's business.
It's tricky, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I guess I can only speak from a sort of business perspective as a creative entrepreneur myself. Maybe it is the case that you can choose what part or role you want to play within the industry. I work with an art director and I'm the business director, and I focus more on the business side of things. And my partner is able to, work with more of the artistic side. And that allows us to create a synergistic sort of business relationship, where we're able to use our creativity, but also make money at the same time. Do you know what I mean? And, if you're going to be a creator and just a creator and you want to just create work and art and, have that sort of impact on society at large, then, maybe you just need to partner up and with someone who can, do the business for you.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, definitely. That is definitely a solution there. And I do think also, like, there are plenty of like artists in like my industry where they're so fulfilled in what they're doing, even if the dollars still kind of dictate what they end up making, and that's great too. But I do think it is really pivotal that we have more creatives in this space that can, yes, do the numbers, do business, and protect creative expression. Because I do think the best marketing, advertising campaigns I've ever seen were led by those leaders, those creative leaders that knew the numbers and also really knew how to empower the artist in those briefs. So then they created these briefs to be full of creativity, but also had like very clear strategic positioning to really get the numbers that the business is looking for. Very far and few creatives I know that can do that, because I do know a lot of talented creatives, like, cinematographers, editors that make beautiful work, but unfortunately lose business because they don't know how to do the numbers or know how to maximize their business so that they get more work, So I do think we can have a good middle of following money and preserving creative expression.
Yeah.
But it depends on the leaders and who's willing to take it up. Because I think to get to that place, at least in the marketing advertising space, it does mean you do end up kind of letting go of some of the active creative part. You become more of a people person, become more of a strategy person, you become more of a business person. And so you kind of do end up letting go some of like your active creative like roles that you used to be in. And I think that's the part why a lot of people don't want to rise to those positions. Like I literally have had friends that rejected those positions because like, no, I would rather be a maker and not the one calling the shots, because that's a totally different thing, right? Usually you don't become a creative to then manage people, strategy, and money. And those people are very far and few. So then a lot of people that aren't creatives end up in those positions, and they're the ones that end up kind of causing the tension within the space.
I think I might add that I feel like a lot of the times creatives don't know how to price their work as well. Because, there are people who are willing to do a lot for free because they don't really see their time or their product as being something that should deserve a lot of money. And I think that's, it sucks because a lot of the times they're like underselling and undercutting themselves. And so I think it's important. And this is something that I think a lot of creatives talk about, is how we need to bring up the value of the work, because it's on us to say, okay, the work is more valuable. You need to pay, and so often the people who are paying the creatives are used to paying little because they're getting away with it. And it's important that artists or the people in the creative industries are calling higher numbers to say, no, this is what we're worth, and you need to pay us. You need to pay to get the expertise.
Yeah.
You know?
There's too much pro bono work happening.
Too much.